Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Urban Update. I'm Byron Barnett. On the show today, another national minority conference comes to town. The opening of a new bank branch in New England's epicenter of technology and innovation, and the oldest domestic violence agency in New England. But up first, it's been a historic week on many fronts. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled same-sex marriages legal in all 50 states. Donald Trump gets canceled after making disparaging remarks about Mexicans, and the debate over the Confederate flag wages on. Now, we've got a lot to go over, and we've got an esteemed panel to do just that this morning. Joining me this morning is the always opinionated Kevin Peterson, founder of the New Democracy Coalition, who also writes a column for the Boston Herald. Also with us, Gary Daffin, executive director of the Multicultural AIDS Coalition and LGBT rights political activist. Welcome to Urban Update, gentlemen. Thanks for coming in. Let's, Kevin, let's start with giving me your take on this whole Confederate flag debate situation and what's happening in South Carolina. I mean, this thing just took off after that terrible shooting in the AME church, the terrible massacre there.
Well, it's an odious symbol. It has been from the beginning. It's been a symbol that represented the Confederacy, the citizens of the United States who rebelled against other citizens of the United States. So from the very beginning, it's been an odious symbol, and that symbol and the sentiment connected to the flag carries on up until Charleston 2 weeks ago. So it's horrible to see. I think the American people have been galvanized to oppose the flag, but there are still some citizens in the South, but also in the North, such as the man in Taunton who refuses to pull down his Confederate flag, and the mistaken strategy by a student at Harvard to put the flag up on the Shaw Memorial last Sunday. It remains an odious symbol that we need to get rid of. It literally needs to be put in the museum, and we need to see it no more.
Now, Gary, I understand that you say you're from Alabama originally?
Right, yeah, I was born and raised there.
So this flag, this whole issue with the flag must have special meaning for you.
Yeah, I lived in Alabama at the time when George Wallace stood in the door of the University of Alabama and said, "We won't let black people here." And so for most of my life there, the flag really represented discrimination. It represented a look back to the past. People thought that white people really were better than black folks. That was really what the flag represented, and people were very clear about it. And it was before black people had more political power in the South. During the 70s and 80s and 90s, people really organized better and got more representation. And I think the country has slowly moved to the point where everyone's recognizing that it's really time to put this thing in a museum where it belongs.
Now, speaking of political power, Donald Trump has apparently, according to a lot of people, there's a column in the Globe about this. Marcela Garcia writes that Donald Trump's latest gaffes talking about disparaging Mexicans has galvanized the Latino community and really become like a watershed moment for the Latino clout. Univision has dropped him. NBC Universal has dropped him. Now we hear Macy's is dropping all of its Donald Trump products. What does that say about where we are as a country and where Latinos are in terms of their clout?
Well, it's a good thing for Latinos because it does galvanize them for the upcoming 2016 elections. It's a bad thing for the Republican Party, who continue to struggle since the year 2000. They continue to struggle with drawing the attention of the Latino community to the Republican Party around the issues of immigration. And in some ways, Donald Trump's comments about Mexicans may reflect the general sentiment among the Republican Party in terms of how they stand
with regard
to race and ethnicity.
And what do you make of that, Gary? This Donald Trump and the Republicans, just for some reason, just can't.
They can't get their act together. Well, I think that the Republicans are really living in the old America, and the new America started in 2008 when President Obama was elected, but they fought that and tried to reject it. But they still think that the country will allow that kind of language, will allow that kind of discriminatory discussion. But what they're finding out is that both the Latino community and the whole community is saying, no, we're not going to put up with that.
The big week continues last week. The Supreme Court ruled that same-sex marriages are legal in all 50 states. I guess, What does that say about where we're at as a country now?
Well, I think it says it's very much in line with these other topics we were discussing. When I first heard the decision, I knew it was going to happen. We all knew that we were going to when we were wondering whether it would be 5-4 or 6-3. And I think most of us felt a relief in the sense that, you know, this is a great country, and we finally get to be fully a part of it. And I think, you know, the civil rights movement was really the basis of our fight. It was the movement that we stood on. And I think the whole country, again, has realized that, you know, people need to be allowed to be who they are, and people need to be able to marry whomever they love. And this is a country that is open and is always moving towards being more open and more welcoming to people to be free.
And Kevin, I guess this last week, all these different rulings, all these really monumental things happening. The president, you know, giving his eulogy that really stirred people. The country is clearly moved to the left, has it not?
Well, I think in some respects it has, and it has moved to a great degree by the soaring rhetoric that that President Obama can rise to at the time. I think that the eulogy of Pastor Pinckney last week was one of those galvanizing moments where race came to the center of the national discussion. It was a conversation on race. It was a monologue, a dialogue on race. He was preaching about race, and I think it will go well for the country as we continue to reflect on the words that he said. The legacy of slavery still exists. The legacy of discrimination, that is the residue of the Jim Crow laws, still exists, and we're going to have to reckon with it.
And Gary, your thoughts on that? I mean, where we are as a country right now, when you look at what happened last week, where we are as a country, what it says for the Obama presidency, his legacy, that was a big week for him last week.
Well, I think what's really underneath all of this is young people. And you look at the gay marriage, if you look at polls around gay marriage, 80% of people under 30 support same-sex marriage. So it's really, the country has evolved in many ways. Even evangelical young people are not interested in fighting about abortion and gay rights. They're interested in poverty. And so the Republican Party in particular, again, hasn't caught up with where young people are and where the country as a whole has moved to.
And I think the ruling around so-called Obamacare was monumental. The rebuke of the Republican parties and those associated with them to cut the subsidies for poor people in terms of them being able to pay for health care. Over 6 million people would have lost that subsidy, and essentially probably would have lost so-called Obamacare, so-called. So, huge win for the president.
A huge win for the president, a big week. I guess that's probably the best week of his presidency. That's what everyone is saying. Kevin Peterson, Gary Daffin, thanks for coming in. And we could go on and on with our discussion. We'll have to cut it off right there. Coming up, another opportunity to showcase Boston as one of the most diverse destinations in the country right here on Urban Update. Stay with us. We'll be right back.